Here.
Mrs. Means? Here. Mr. McCollins?
Here.
Mr. Music?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mrs. Sorrell?
Here.
Dr. Zorch?
Present.
And Mr. Hauser?
Here.
You're all here.
That's Superintendent report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hauser. Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. As you are aware, at the December 1st, 2020 Board of Education meeting, the Board of Education determined that our students would participate in a full online instructional model from December 4th, 2020 through January 18th, 2021. This decision was made to provide the best continuity of education for our students, while also doing our best to maintain the health and safety of our entire school community and to adhere to the Pennsylvania Department of Health guidelines for the travel during the holiday season. On January 7th, the Greater Latrobe School District's Health and Safety Committee met to discuss what best instructional model to implement for our students after January 18th. This newly formed committee consists of board members, medical advisors, and district administrators. Dr. Michael Zorch is the chairperson. Mr. Stephen LaCasio, Mr. Merle Music, and Mr. Paul McCommons represent the Board of Education on this committee. For this committee, we do have medical advisors that include Dr. Bill Jenkins, who we've worked with very closely through the entire pandemic, Dr. Thomas Maroon, Dr. Christina Armanius, and Dr. Stephen Mills, our school physician as well. During the committee meeting, all members agreed that in-person instruction is by far the best instructional model for our students. However, concerns were raised by the medical team and the Health and Safety Committee regarding the rapidly increasing rates of new COVID cases and hospitalizations in our county. As a result, the committee decided to reconvene on Monday, January 18, 2021, to further discuss the most appropriate instructional model moving forward. Doing so, in meeting on this day, will allow the committee to have a full 2 weeks of post-holiday COVID-related data to assess in order to determine the extent, if any, of a post-holiday surge of COVID-related illnesses. Friday, January 15th, closes the second week past the New Year's Day holiday. Therefore, again, the Board of Education will review the Health and Safety Committee's recommendation from the January 18th meeting at their regular board meeting next Tuesday, January 19th, and determine at that time if our instructional model should be modified to include time in a brick and mortar setting for our students. Any change to our instructional model that may be made at the regular meeting on January 19th would go into effect beginning Monday, January 25th, thus giving parents the time to plan accordingly. As a result of the meeting and the decisions that have been made, all students will currently remain in Greater Latrobe School District's full online instructional model through Friday, January 22nd. Again, our Health and Safety Committee meeting will be held next Monday, January 18th, and our Board of Education will be meeting again to discuss our model moving forward. If there is a decision to return to any type of brick and mortar instruction and change our model from full remote, The change of instructional model would occur Monday, January 25th. There will also be a letter posted on our district website explaining this timeline. As we continue to navigate this global pandemic, we are aware that students greatly benefit from face-to-face instruction and social interaction while continuing to build positive relationships with their teachers. Greater Latrobe School District will continue to do the very best to provide the opportunity for brick and mortar instruction while keeping the health, safety, and welfare of our entire school community as a priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pepper. Solicitor's report, Mr. Nichols.
Yes, Mr. President, I wasn't sure if I heard or not. Did you announce the executive session for personal and legal? Can I miss before we start?
I did not.
I'll do that. We had a executive session before this meeting for personal and legal, and that's all I have. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Education and planning, Mrs. Mann.
Thank you. Mr. Parenka, the enrollment report is attached. Do you have any comment on it this evening?
The only thing that I would comment on, as I do yearly, is the pandemic does not stop the registration of incoming kindergartners. It may change the way the registration of incoming kindergartners looks, but it doesn't stop that process. The kindergarten registration portal opens February 1st on the Glsd website, and typically incoming kindergarten parents are invited here to the auditorium or to the CSC for an informational night. That information will be posted on the website so that you can watch it virtually at your convenience. If you have an incoming kindergartner, again, you go to our portal. One note, though, that I did want to bring up to you, Mrs. Maines, this year's kindergarten class has 229 students in it. That's not the smallest class of students that we have here at Greater Latrobe. It would be the 4th grade that has 222 students in it. So when I saw those numbers, I just did, sometimes I'll take our 3 highest classes and our 3 lowest classes and see what the difference is between them. Our highest class is the senior class at 329. So when I take the 3 highest grade levels, 12, 8, and 10, and compare it to our 3 lowest, 4th grade kindergarten and 1st grade, our 3 lowest are 277 students smaller than our 3 highest. That gap continues to grow with our enrollment. Now, we did a 35-year look back. We are still not our lowest point. How many kids in your graduating class, Mr. Music? 525. Right, 525. And I remember being at the junior high, and Dr. Tepper remembers being at the senior high with classes over 400. But we're lucky to get to the 3s now. So if you have kindergarten-age children, get them in here. Let's get them to school, and let's pump that number up above 229.
Great. Thank you. Second, on your agenda for next week will be several approvals. One to approve sign language interpreting professional fees and policies document. Another one to approve the St. Francis University Cooperative Academic Agreement / college and high school for the 2021 school year. We do that every year. The next one is to approve the News Story 2021 rate reduction tuition agreement for student B. And lastly, to approve the 2021 calendar changes. We approved calendar changes last time, but we're going to change that again, right, Dr.?
Yes, we are. We are making the change. We had a day, which would have been December 1st, that we had to make up for our students' instruction. We are going to make that day up on Tuesday, April 6th, instead of June 8th. Tuesday, April 6th would have been the second snow day for spring break. Being that snow days now, that we have flexible instructional days and can actually hold online instruction, we know that that snow day would not be utilized. So we feel it's best for students, and teachers have recommended as well, GLEA, that a better day for instruction would be April 6th as opposed to the end of the school year in June. Thank you, Mrs. Maines.
Yes, thank you for explaining.
Sure.
The next curriculum committee meeting will be held next Tuesday, January the 19th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. here in CSC. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mays. Finance, on the agenda for your approval will be the treasurer's report, the payment of bills, and the Act 1 resolution not to raise taxes above the index. Also will be on the agenda for your approval will be the local audit report, approves gifts, grants, and donations, and the IRS millage rate for 2020. As an informational thing, the IRS millage rate for 2021 is now 56 cents per mile. So that went up a little bit. Our next Finance Committee meeting will be Tuesday, February 9th at 5:30 p.m. Senior High School Library. Facilities Operation and Planning, Mr. Palmer.
Excuse me, Mr. Hauser. Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
We have Barb Terrick from Border Rival and Terrick's present tonight. She's going to do a very quick review of our audit report. So Barb,
Okay, we can, yeah,
Barb, if you don't mind coming up to the mic. I know everybody's very excited to hear this report.
I know.
I didn't want to gloss over.
I know. Does everyone have copies of the report?
We have hard copies at all the board members' places. It was attached to the agenda, and there's also an electronic copy at the district's website.
Okay, did you give them the governance
I
letter?
did. It's the second page inside the book.
Okay, yes, you will have, it will be on letterhead, and it's a loose copy. And this is essentially this is the communication between us as auditors and you as the board members, because you have governance over the financial statements. So under our professional standards, we're required to communicate directly to you as the school board and management, because you're not there on a daily basis. So basically, this letter just outlines some significant audit findings. There were no new accounting policies adopted this year, mostly because a lot of them were delayed with COVID. And the accounting estimates that are most significant to the financial statements are the compensated absences liability. Management has to figure out how many people are going to actually retire and take their unused sick and vacation days. The unfunded other post-employment benefits liability, which is an actuarial valuation. And then once again, the pension liability is also actuarially determined. We encountered no significant difficulties with management while we were performing the audit. Any of the misstatements that we recommended, any journal entries we recommended were posted, and of course, Dan knows they're coming in and requests that we do those. We had no disagreements with management. Management signed the representations indicating that everything they told us was truthful, and they gave us all the information we needed. Management had no consultations with other independent accountants. There were no disagreements on the application of accounting principles. The management's discussion and analysis, which we'll look at very briefly, is prepared by management, and the supplemental information, the required supplemental information, is pretty much prepared by your pension company, etc. So we look at those and we compare those to the financial statements, but we don't necessarily issue an opinion on those. And this report is really just for you. Anybody asks for it, you don't have to give it to them. Obviously, it's basically public information, but it's really just for the school board and management. So with regard to your audit report, which is the bound copy, on page 3 of the financial statement is the independent auditor's report. And that provides an overview of your responsibility versus our responsibility under the audit. The key is at the top of page 4 where we issue our opinion. And our opinion is that your financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And that no changes need to be made in order for that to be so. So that's pretty much the cleanest opinion that you can get. And we'll get into internal control and such in the back of the report. Now on page 6 is the management's discussion and analysis. This is an overview of your financial statements. It goes before your actual financial statements so that anyone reading your report might just read this first and then quit. That's actually what their thinking was. So it's prepared by management. It provides a summary of current year activity, but then also provides a comparison to the previous year. So it's actually quite a useful document there if you want to read that. Now on pages 15 and 16 are your government-wide financial statements. These are prepared on the full accrual basis. So any asset, any liability is included on here. These are not the financial statements that you as a school generally look at. It's really designed so that users of the financial statements can compare the government with business activities. So that includes everything, long-term, current, everything. Now, if you go to page 17, this is the modified accrual basis. This is how a government operates. So you can see on page 17, your governmental funds, you have total assets of $20 million, and that includes your cash, investments, taxes receivable, everything pretty much that's current. The only thing that's included in those assets is if you look down a little bit, the deferred inflows of resources, the unavailable resources, property taxes. Those are property taxes that are going to be collected 60 days, beyond 60 days after year end. So for some reason they make us put that on there. But if you look down at governmental fund balances, you can see that your fund balance, you have some non-spendable in inventories and prepaid expenses, and then you have some restricted for art conservation and capital projects. The committed, you have $851,000 that you've committed for PSERS increases. The assigned fund balance, the athletic departments, the athletic programs, and the debt service, those are funds specific for those items. And then your unassigned is the $2.2 million. So the unassigned fund balance is essentially what you have available to use going forward. Everything else is pretty much committed, etc. Now, if we go back to page 21, 21 provides a comparison of budget to actual, and this is on the general fund. And you can see that your general fund had a decrease in fund balances of $115,000. And if you look at this report, you can see your beginning budget versus your final budget versus your actual, and how, as a school, you operated going forward. Page 23 provides an overview of your proprietary fund, which is your food service. And obviously the general fund has to support that because it can't support itself completely. Now, if we go back to the back of the report where the single audit information is, page 72, page 73 provides your independent auditor's report for government auditing standards. So this essentially provides your internal control and your compliance for government auditing standards, and this is over your basic financial statements. And once again, if we go to page 74, we have internal control. We didn't identify any deficiencies. Compliance, we didn't identify any deficiencies in compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, etc. So that's good. On page 75 is our internal control and compliance under federal financial assistance and federal programs. Once again, we did not identify internal control deficiencies or non-compliance with laws and regulations. And that takes a lot of effort, obviously, because there are a lot of rules. Okay, so then page 78 is your scheduled federal awards. And you actually expended $2.1 million in federal expenditures. And if you go back to page 80, 80 provides the overview, the summary of findings and question costs. It just recaps everything. The audit report has an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. The government auditing standards report reported no internal control deficiency or no non-compliance. And the same with the single audit. So it provides those same findings there. So anytime you're looking at a government report like this, if you look at the management's discussion and analysis, that's the layman's view of the financial statement. That's what it's intended to be. And then, of course, the summary of the financial statements provides a basic summary of what the auditor found when they were working on it. Any questions?
And I shared with Mrs. Terry, I reviewed this in detail with the Finance Committee prior to the meeting. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll then in turn talk to Barb, and she'll answer the question, and I'll get back to you. But thank you for coming out and speaking.
Right, and you have our letterhead. We welcome questions. If you have questions, feel free to call us. It's fine. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Facilities Operations Planning, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next week, I would ask the board to approve the renewal of the Johnson Controls Fire Protection LP Services Agreement and award bids for the maintenance vehicles and facilities Facilities Operations Planning Committee meeting minutes from January 7th are attached. And our next Facilities Operations Planning Committee meeting will be Thursday, February 4th at 3:30 p.m. at the Administration Building. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Student Activities and Recreation, Mr. LaCasio.
Yes, the Student Activities and Recreation Committee met yesterday, and there is no additional meeting scheduled as of this time. That's it in my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. LaCasio. Community Relations, Mrs. Rath.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. The minutes of the December 17th meeting of the Latrobe GLSD Parks and Recreation Commission meeting are attached for your review. And the next meeting of the Park and Rec Commission will be Thursday, January 21st at 4:30 at the Latrobe Municipal Building, Council Chambers. That's all we have, Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, Mrs. Rath. Thank you. Westmoreland Intermediate Unit, Mr. Banks.
Yes, next week on your agenda, we will approve a nomination for Greater Latrobe School District Board Member to serve on the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit Board of Directors. The next WIU committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January the 26th, 2021 at 7 p.m. and that's to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Banks. Transportation, Mr. Music.
Thank you. I have no report this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Music. EWCTC Joint Operating Committee, Mrs. Kozar.
Yes, the next meeting for the EWTC Joint Operating Committee will be in January 27th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the EWCTC. Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Thank you, Mrs. Kozar. Board Policy Liaison, Mrs. Rath.
The next meeting of the Board Policy Committee will be Thursday, January 28th at 9 a.m. at the Central Admin Building. And that's all we have. Thank you, Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Technology, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the board next week to approve the E-Rate Network Equipment Award. There's an attachment. You should all take a look at it. Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, by the way, our next technology committee meeting will be Tuesday, February 16th at 5:30 here at the CSC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Health and Safety Committee, Dr. George.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting are attached. I thought I should say a couple of things. Everyone can read it, but just to summarize, our recommendation at the present time was to have another meeting on Monday to review what is happening in the county as far as transmission of COVID. As everyone has seen in the media and what the new CDC recommendations have come out, that they are recommending all children go back to school. We are, however, in a substantial rate of transmission in our community, which has overwhelmed our hospital system and caused a lot of crisis with taking care of sick patients. We've had 32 people die in a cell health at the beginning of this month, so we are still in a bad situation for our community. Hopefully things will settle down by the time we have our next meeting and we can get the kids back in school, which I fully support. I think the kids need to be back in school, but right now we're concerned about the whole community, which is why the recommendation is made the way it was. I think if we look at the risk for who is going to school, the risk for students, especially in the elementary schools, is next to none. The risk, as you get a little bit older, the kids get older, it does go up, but even so, the risk for high school students isn't as bad as it is for adults. And these are the people that are greatest risk in our school community right now, are the adults and staff who work in our buildings. We want to protect as well. Right now, we are substantial, which the Department of Education, Department of Health has put all kinds of crazy matrices in place for how we're supposed to look at our schools. One of our concerns with the committee was that based on what they're telling us with opening and closing schools, we were concerned that being in a substantial area of transmission right now, that we would be yo-yoing the kids back and forth between closing the school and opening the schools, which is what we want to avoid. We don't want to get these kids in a situation where we put them in school and then 2 days later we shut it down again, which is our concern right now. If we get out of substantial, I think we can just open the schools and let the kids go back. So that's where we are in a nutshell. If our state would get on the stick and get the vaccinations out and get a plan for getting people vaccinated, I think that would help us a lot too, because clearly the risk for adults is much greater. As far as I'm concerned, teachers are frontline essential workers, and they should be on a vaccination list sooner rather than later. But as of right now, our committee's recommendation has been to re-meet and consider that we a substantial transmission that we're going to slow things down and take a look at it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. George. Also, your next Health Safety Committee meeting, of course, that would be Monday, January 18th. Student Superintendent's recommendations, Dr. Tepper.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hauser. I will be asking the board to approve on the resignations and or retirements as stated. Susan Caldwell, payroll manager, David Cook, senior high school teacher, Mary Kaluter, part-time secretary, and Alan Wolf, custodian. I would also ask the board next week to move on the approval of 2 substitute teachers and to approve support personnel, classified position, Amy Sassos as a confidential secretary for facility for the building facilities and operations office, and Nicole Jamison for a part-time food service employee. Also, I will ask the board to please move on my recommendation to approve supplemental appointments volunteer coaches Tyler Gustafson for varsity wrestling and Michael J. Yandrick for varsity basketball. The board will be asked to move to approve the Act 93 perquisite program and would ask permission to advertise for our board retreat to be held April 24th, 2021. Under other business, we have an Act 80 day scheduled for Monday, January 18th, where there's no school for students and teachers will be participating in professional development activities. We do have a 2-hour late start scheduled for Tuesday, January 19th. The schedule for that, being that our students are on a remote instructional model, I ask that student and or parents defer to your building principal and your teachers regarding your child's online schedule for that day. That can vary from building to building due to the fact that we are in a remote instructional model. As Mr. Paremka stated, we have incoming kindergarten parent information registration, which will be released February 1st and will be available online on our website. As stated, our next regular board meeting will be held next Tuesday, the 19th, followed by February's Committee of the Whole meeting, February 9th, and a regular board meeting, February 16th. And again, the date for our board retreat, Saturday, April 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tepper. I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. At this time, I'd like to adjourn the meeting.